first and foremost, the Vikings had joint practices and a football game against the Tennessee Titans this last week in the Twin Cities. I'll just go right to it, Jordan. What stood out to you from a positive perspective, whether that's a unit or a player or a coach, anything that stood out that got you excited for anything Vikings related as we move into this last and final week of preseason?
I think that, by the way, it's the thumbnail for this video, because the thumbnail is typically just us as a picture. Like, even like the podcast. I'm in all Notre Dame stuff. I have to say that on air. Notre Dame plays on Saturday in Ireland. I'm very excited about it. So I am all decked out. It's 85 degrees outside in Ohio right now. I'm in a beanie. There's a little ball on the top that my webcam doesn't want to pick up, but like, I'm all decked out in my Notre Dame stuff, and I'm excited about it. But this is a Vikings show. Watching the preseason, and I have it down on the ticker below. I want to see Jalen Hall get some reps as a backup. He had a couple of throws in his limited time with the offense that made me say, hang on a second. Like, that's what I saw at BYU that made me think, hey, this guy could be something maybe in the NFL. And even if the ceiling that he may be is a backup, we still need to know if he is backup of, if he can be a high-end backup, if he's kind of a Kellen Mond, bounce around to a new team and then probably flame out there and not really be an NFL guy. Maybe he can go play in the XFL. Who knows? He had a couple of balls that, I can't remember who it was to. I want to say Theo Thomas. He dropped a ball in between like two defenders, hit him really well, and it fell incomplete. And I also think he had one to Tristan Jackson that got dropped. But that, again, these may not be exactly. But he had a couple of passes that made me kind of excited. And I'm not trying to be the Jordan hates Kirk. Jordan doesn't want Kirk Cousins as the Viking. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying Jalen Hall should take Kirk Cousins' job. I'm just saying, we spent a draft pick on him, and I guarantee there's going to be a 5th, 6th, 7th round guy in the draft, like from this draft class in the NFL, that is going to end up being like good and a really high level contributor, because there always is at least like one. And so getting a high-end backup makes me feel better about not drafting whoever the high-end contributor is than drafting a quarterback that ends up just flaming out and amounts to nothing. So I really want to see him get a run with the twos, and maybe we talk about that whenever we talk about the Arizona game later, but or the Arizona practices, whatever. But I don't know. Maybe give like I almost said Kellen Mond. Maybe give Nick Mullins a quota, and then sit him, and then let Jalen Hall do the rest. And hey, maybe you let Jordan Ta'amu, the XFL superstar quarterback, the throwing Samoan, a former St. Louis Battlehawk Kaka, maybe let him play the 4th quarter next week, right? And he can get a run, and he can hand the ball off a few times to, get us out healthy and happy in the final preseason game. But I just want to see more of Jalen Hall, and I don't think we're necessarily getting to see what he could be throwing to. The best guy he's throwing to is probably Nick Muse, and that's not exactly elite level talent.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought. That was like my post-game tweet was basically that of, I'd like to see Jaren Hall get a run with the twos.
Yeah.
Frankly, I would like. I think it's pretty set in stone that Nick Mullins is the backup at this point. I don't think that is going to be taken away, barring some bad injury or unforeseen horrific drop off in the next week. He's a solid, steady veteran. He looks decisive when he plays, even if he's not always accurate. He doesn't get you into trouble. He did almost throw an interception in the red zone last night, but generally speaking, he is sort of a steadying presence. And I think he even showed that when he started a handful of games for the 49ers back in the day. So he's very much a lock, in my opinion, for the second string quarterback job. And so I'm almost at the position where I would just say, sit Mullins, sit Kirk, let Hall play the entire game. Maybe throw Tiamo in there, like you were saying. Just give him, a little bit of run too. But at this point you have to give him more of a fair shake. And it's not that, like, because you can make the argument that, like, well, he's going up against third stringers and fourth stringers as well, so it's fair. But the counter to that is his offensive line is giving him no protection, and his receivers aren't catching the ball, and so the best couple plays we saw from him were scrambles, and
Yeah.
part of that is, yeah, maybe he has to make better throws, better decisions, and that's obviously true for a rookie who's played one full game of NFL football. But yeah, I'd like to see him get better run with some better targets and with a better offensive line. I think it would just, not that he needs a fair shake, because I think it's pretty clear that Mullins is the better quarterback right now, but would just like to see what he can do. And I think the Vikings would do well to get him, some reps so that they can also have a better understanding of where he's at.
Yeah.
Unless,
oh, go ahead.
just last quick thing, unless they don't want to put any really good film of him out there, if they're worried about, putting him on the practice squad and somebody swoops in and takes him because he wowed against Arizona or something. You know what I mean? That's pretty unlikely, but that's maybe a conspiracy theory. Anyway,
I dig that conspiracy theory a lot, but my problem is, and I like what the NFL did in the offseason with the emergency quarterback rule, which they worded it. I don't want to get into like a whole thing about like the legal, like the rule. I can't think, the rule lawyering, if you will, of the emergency QB rule. But it's you can't run wildcat basically if you have him in, because he can't line up anywhere but quarterback. So you can't go take.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's super weird. If you keep him on the 53, you can keep him as an extra active game day. He can suit up on game day, but he can't, if he comes into the game, the other two guys can't come back into the game, and he can't line up at wide receiver. It's super weird, but I think the Vikings should entertain keeping a third quarterback on the roster and just keeping Jaron Hall. And I think that they should let him go out there. And look, if he looks bad, okay, put him on the practice squad. He looked bad. I don't know that teams are going to be champing at the bit to get him off of your practice squad to put on their active roster, because that is how it works. Is they can't just say, well, we want that guy on our practice squad actually, so we're going to steal him. No, they have to give him one of the 53 spots. And so if he looks bad, you can kind of sneak him onto the practice squad. If he looks really good, though, then you have a situation where, do you really think Vikings fans are going to show up demanding to see Jaron Hall overtake the backup job from Nick Mullins? Who cares? Obviously it matters if something, God forbid, happens to Cousins, but I don't think that fans are necessarily going to care about that. And if Cousins goes down, I think Vikings fans have all made their peace that no Cousins, no season almost. If he goes down, Nick Mullins isn't going to Case Keenum us to a potential Super Bowl run, especially with how the defense is expected to be this season. Even if it takes a massive step up, we're still not talking about the 2017 Vikings defense. So, yeah, I agree. Let him play the full game. Let him play, again, if you want to keep Mullins, because Mullins might not get a lot of play time with live bullets flying come the regular season, because Cousins historically, knock on all of the wood, has stayed healthy, then, okay, let Mullins play the first quarter, and then let Jaron Hall play the second quarter, and leave him in there with the twos, and let your twos play, and let that be what it is. I want to see him throw to Jalen Rago, maybe Jalen Naylor if he can get healthy, and not be throwing to guys like that. I can't even think of some of the guys.
Cole and Thayer Thomas.
Yeah. Thayer Thomas. That was the name I was thinking of. But
Garrett
Blake
Magg,
Cole. Yeah. And again, his best receiver is Nick Muse. And also, I am looking over at our text as kind of like our show notes sort of thing. And I find it very funny that I do think it's worth bringing up. N'Keal Harry didn't take a snap because he was dealing with some sort of an injury. But I do have to, I thought it was funny, and I sometimes do consider myself to be a funny guy. You said, has N'Keal Harry played at all tonight? And I responded with, they'll sit in the Staudos. So no, N'Keal Harry's not taking any snaps. You know, he's wide receiver 3 in some people's eyes because he's tall. And so that's kind of sprinkling in some Vikings news. N'Keal Harry apparently walking through some injury.
Yeah.
I have down on the ticker below. Let me readjust in my seat here. I have down on the ticker below that the Lewis Scene bust-o-meter, which is what I'm calling it now, we're setting it to orange. We've moved. Wow. We have moved from yellow to orange. The next step is red, and red is like, is he going to make the 53? And I don't think we'll be talking about it being in the red until next season. But Scene didn't look good. I don't think he looked too good last night. He had, he got put on a posto by Tajay Spears, and Tajay Spears is a good running back. I loved him in the draft coming out of Tulane. He's shifty, he's small, he's athletic, and that's kind of what he does. Is he can, if you try to go low on him, he's gonna go over top of you. And so Lewis Scene and Andrew Sendejo. Lewis Scene and Andrew Booth are not looking like a good back-to-back selection for the Vikings, and it is starting to seem as if Kwesi is losing a lot of credit in the fan base, and I'm not going to be the optimistic, pretend optimistic, oh, they'll be fine, they just need time to develop, and they got banged up last season, so, this is kind of the actual rookie season, and it's like, no, last year was the rookie seasons. And they didn't look that good in camp, and they didn't get starting gigs, and then whenever they did get time to play, they didn't look good whenever they played, and then they got injured, which for Booth is like kind of the reason he fell was because he couldn't stay healthy, and he's had trouble staying healthy this camp, and then he gets into games and he doesn't look good. Like, he just doesn't look that great. And so, and then he makes a play in training camp, in a joint practice, he makes one interception, and he immediately launches the ball at the Titans sideline. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing, Andrew Booth Jr.? You got to be on, you got to be dotting your I's, crossing your T's, best behavior, making plays, keeping your head down guy. You can't be, I don't know. That seems like if Patrick Peterson did that, I'd be like, yeah, he's got the dog in him. I like that he's doing that. But when Andrew Booth is doing that, it's like, buddy, do you know who you are? Like, you're not him. You're not that guy, pal. Trust me, you're not that guy. So, yeah, I think that's worth bringing up. Everybody saw it. Everybody laughed at it. It reminded me a lot of the Anthony Barr, Josh Allen play, but Anthony Barr was kind of an established, pretty good linebacker in the NFL at that point, whereas Lewis Scene has yet to stout a game at safety in the NFL, even though he was a first-round draft pick at safety. So, I don't know. Am I moving too quickly? Because I think I said a couple weeks ago on the show, like, oh, I'm not going to get too concerned about him yet. And now we're moving. We're moving quick.
I don't disagree in a lot of it. I face palmed on that, on that Tajay Spears touchdown because it looked exactly like the play that you want your free safety to make, like stuff a run that, the line basically allowed the Red Sea to part, and he's got like a 4 or 5 yard gain. And that's a situation where the safety has to make the tackle. And it was a golden opportunity for him, to make a play, and he didn't. However, apart from that, and I think one other play that I really noticed him take a bad angle on, he was guarding a receiver out on the right hash, and it looked like at the last second, as he was trying to undercut the route and intercept it, he realized he didn't have the angle. And so he was just sort of at like a weird disposition where he had to like then backpedal to try and get to the receiver. It only ended up being like an 8 yard gain on what ended up being a punt for the Titans. But that was a play where it looked like he was just a little bit out of position. Apart from those couple plays, though, I didn't mind his game. I thought he was very energetic. I thought he was all over the place making tackles. He led the team in tackles, by the way. 6 tackles, which for a preseason game, obviously that's a low number, but there's so many guys rotating in and out that
right.
It's not too indicative of maybe a regular season game, but so he led the team in tackles, which to me just kind of shows that he was engaged in most plays. There was a play early in the game where him and Ivan Pace together made a stop. I think it was on either Spears or Chestnut. Fantastic name, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think it was either a tackle for loss or a short yardage gain. So he had some plays like that I was really impressed by. However, maybe I'll lump all this together with like the whole secondary in pass protection, and then also just Andrew Booth in general. I know I was just talking about Lewis Cine, but throwing Andrew Booth in here too, the defense as a whole left the middle of the field way too open. And on the broadcast, Pete Bursich was kind of chalking it up to maybe like in dime looks where, you know, the guys who are lined up as linebackers are DBs, and so they're not really used to linebacker drops. But I actually don't think the Vikings were in too much dime yesterday. It was a lot of base package.
Yeah.
So not to contradict the former Viking great, but I do think that that situation was just in general poor execution by the defense. The middle of the field was wide open way too much, and you have to blame a safety for a little bit of that. That's his domain, right? For most of the time, and so Scene wasn't perfect. He was up and down. I would leave the panic-o-meter at about yellow though. I'm seeing enough things where like I still have like optimism for him to continue ascending. I also, on the flip of Andrew Booth, I really like Lewis Scene's demeanor. He's very much like understanding of where he's at, and he knows that like everything is on the line for him right now. And he gets a lot of chances to talk because he's a first round pick and everything, but I do appreciate sort of his like where he's at with that. He's not overshooting his target by thinking that he's got his next steps locked up, because
Right.
there's a real world where he might not even make the team. He would, for the most part. There's a very good chance that he will make the team, but like nothing's locked up for him, and I think he understands that. With Andrew Booth, I'm really worried. It's
Yeah.
it's not full on red yet, because he's still got a week of joint practices and one more game, and then whatever else left. Basically that's it, I guess, and then cuts happen. He can't cover right now, and he missed a tackle in space yesterday that would have forced a punt. As I was watching I like watched the whole play unfold. He had Spears on the left, like flat basically, to tackle him for a loss, which would have forced a punt. He did everything right except make the tackle. And I think Bursich commented on his angle might have been a little bit off too, but he was there. He had his arms around the running back's legs, and he just couldn't finish the play. It's just such a juxtaposition to like when a Caleb Evans is in that situation, he makes the play every time.
Right.
And I don't have any concerns about Booth's desire and want to. You watch every rep, whether he does it well or does it poorly, he has a very visceral reaction. You can tell he really wants it. And frankly, yeah, the chucking the ball over the sideline thing at practice, I was there. I saw it happen. I didn't really mind it, to be honest. I think your point about like know who you are, know your place, I totally like. I agree with that. But in some ways, I didn't mind the fact that he made a play, and that wasn't the first play he made that day. He made a few nice pass breakups, even in some in very like disadvantageous situations, like 7-on-7s and 1-on-1s and stuff. And so he made some nice plays throughout the day. And I think at some point, maybe he wanted to let the Titans hear it for any trash talk. I don't know if there was or not, but in some ways I didn't mind the chucking of the ball, because it showed a little bit of fire.
Yeah.
And it's clear that he wants it. But on the same coin, wanting it and doing it are two different things. And so I'm very much concerned. He couldn't even guard tight ends yesterday. So I don't know. I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about his prospects of, really contributing to this team, because you even think about special teams. You got guys like Najee Thompson, who he is going to make the team. For people who don't care about special teams and turn their head or look at their phone during punts, you shouldn't, because Najee Thompson is a gunner. He has made 3 tremendous special teams plays on punts in 2 games. I think he's making the team. To me, he looks like the new Chris Boyd, and he is technically a defensive back, so that kind of takes up some space in the defensive back room. So Mr. Booth is going to have to really have an awesome last week, because at this point I'm concerned about not only his prospects to, have a spot on the roster to contribute. I'm concerned about his ability to even like have a spot on the roster in some ways. And we can talk about cuts and stuff next week, but 53 is a small number when you have to go down from 90, and he's not looking great.
Yeah, I think that it's fair to say I have 2 points to make here. Number one, let's go back to Lewis Cine. Let's say the official stance of the Lewis Cine bustometer is a nice ambo. It's yellowy and it's orange at the same time. Well, it's moving. It's
sunset time.
It's ticking up. It is like the thermometer in the month of May. It is just getting higher and higher every day, it seems like. But I don't have doubts that he's going to make the team. Andrew Booth Jr., I think the only reason that we're assuming Andrew Booth makes the team is, one, this team, I mean, like, who the hell do they have in the cornerback room? And 2, he was a second-round draft pick that a lot of people thought could be a first-round pick. I mean, and whether you like it or not, that's how the NFL works. I mean, you look at, like N'Keal Harry is a Viking right now because he was a first-round pick and he's tall. That's the only reason. Other than that, like, he's done nothing in the league that warrants... He's a decent run-blocking wide receiver, but, like, he really hasn't done much in the league that warrants, a roster spot. And I don't know that he makes the 53. Because why would he? Yeah. I mean, why? How does he help the team outside of? Okay, he can help in the run game, but like if you want to throw the ball with him in the game, you're basically playing 10 on 11 because he doesn't really contribute that much. So and with you flip it over back to Andrew Booth, and it's like it almost feels like again you're playing 10 on 11 because Andrew Booth is just not that. He doesn't look good. He doesn't look good. And I appreciate that, he wants it, and I appreciate that he, he's passionate and he's a competitor, and, all of these kind of buzzwords almost about, I mean, I would expect everybody that's out on that field to want it and to compete and to do all that stuff. The problem is, like, it comes down to execution. And like you said, 53 is a tiny number when you're cutting down from 90. You're cutting the team in half, basically, come next week. I mean, I would not be... My jaw would not drop if Andrew Booth got released. And especially there are some murmurs about a potential Duke Shelley free agency happening. I mean, I'm not trying to be any sort of way, but I would hope that the Vikings give him a call. And I do think that, and I don't want to get to, because I have an Ivan Pace. I want to talk about Ivan Pace. Because his stock continues to just skyrocket. He had a sack in the game, and so I think that his play should be talked about. But I do think that there's the potential that we're going to start talking about, Kwesi maybe not being a good GM. I'm not there yet, but let me give you the preview as to what that conversation looks like. Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth. He got lucky with a Caleb Evans, and then in this past draft, Jordan Addison looks like he's going to be good, but then it doesn't seem like he's made the roster significantly better than it was when Zimmer was here. It seems like the offensive change in mindset and going with going with the Los Angeles Rams, San Francisco 49ers, like that kind of style of offense helped the team out a lot. And Cousins having a coach that likes him seems like that has helped out a lot more than it is like Kwesi came in and fixed Rick Spielman's roster screw-ups. And that's why we won 13 games last year. And that's kind of the preview into what it looks like. And like my mentality on the draft is like you either have a draft that makes you like the Seahawks have had drafts in the last couple of years where it's like, okay, yeah, they're going to be contenders, like because they have drafted extraordinarily well. You can have either that draft, you can have like hopefully what the Vikings have done, which is you got lucky with a couple of picks and it's going to keep you it's going to keep you hovering, in that wild card division range. Oh, you can just have dud drafts like the Browns did for 30 straight years, and you end up being really bad for a long time because you don't draft well, and you have to overpay for free agents to come in. So we'll see. We'll have this conversation next season, I'm sure, after we see what this draft class does. Maybe some guys from like if a Caleb Evans ends up being a really good defensive back, cool.
Who cares that he was the fourth round? At that point,
it doesn't matter at that point. But then there's the question of like, well, if we could have got him in the fourth round and Tariq Woolen, who is a good corner that's in Seattle, we could have gotten Tariq Woolen in the second or third round instead of Andrew Booth. Then you can start comparing these guys. It's really easy to start doing it. Everybody does it with Michael Thomas and the Saints and all the wide receivers taken before him, and he ended up being Michael Thomas. And so I don't know. Let's talk about Ivan Pace. I'm getting a little bit too negative. I want to be happy about something. By the way, I don't think either of us mentioned, maybe you did, but I definitely did not mention that the Vikings did lose this preseason game. We lost by 8. Well, 0-2 in the preseason, but it really doesn't matter. And I think that's why we didn't bring it up. This is basically just, it's preseason. Who cares? But Ivan Pace got a sack. I'm still going on the record that Ivan Pace is going to have 7 sacks this season just on blitzes. I don't even know that he's going to be a starter. But when he's in the game, I think he's just going to make good stuff happen. And I'm really excited about seeing him play. What did you see from him this weekend that made you more excited, less excited? Maybe you're kind of just like, hey, this is the Cincinnati guy raving about the guy from the University of Cincinnati. Maybe we should cool our jets a little bit. What are you feeling about Ivan Pace?
I think my opinion of him, or his stock in my mind, is sort of where it was a week ago, which is not that he got any worse or didn't make improvement. Just like he looks about where I would have expected him to look given where he was at last week. And maybe that's because he has come to this point where he has this weird sort of like folklore around him, and he is an undrafted free agent. And I don't know, if there's ever been a more talked about undrafted free agent 2 weeks into training camp, because I feel like he was the talk of the town the night after the draft, because people were saying, "Ooh, they got this guy who was supposed to be drafted but didn't. That looks interesting." And I mean, he's gotten way more chatter than Jay Ward has, or even Mekhi Blackman has at this point, which is pretty impressive, for where he's at. But I think what I will say, a couple things to note. Again, he wore the green dot, meaning he had the communication device inside of his helmet. He was calling the defense. He was making the checks. He was the captain of the defense when he was out there. Now he has done that already. That's not news. But what that does show is the continued trust in him, the continued belief that this coaching staff has in him to play with his mind and not just react. He is clearly a very cerebral player as well as a very physical player. He had a big QB hit, I think, on the first drive of the game that caused an incompletion on third down. Some great stops in the run game. Again, overall, very good performance. I'm not necessarily like going crazy that he's going to start, but depending on where Brian Asamoah is, there is a real chance that Ivan Pace gets a start early in the season if Asamoah is not ready to roll. I didn't see Asamoah, suit up at camp when I was out there last week. So there's a real chance that that Pace gets a lot of run this year. And so he's obviously just an exciting player to keep watching.
Yeah. I said, and we're running low on time here, so this will be, we're not running low on time. I'm an idiot. Forget what I just said. We have all the time in the world. I had a mental hiccup there. But anyway, you go back to my pre-draft kind of talks, our shows, talking about prospects, who I liked, mock drafts that I did, reviewing them. I took Ivan Pace in a lot of them, and I said in a lot of them, this guy is like a tiny Micah Parsons in that I like how he gets after the quarterback. I think if you bring him in here and you let Danielle Hunter say, hey, here's some technical pass rushing moves you can use, he could end up being a pass rusher. And I apparently was wrong about that because he's a traditional like inside linebacker when the Vikings use him, but they're using him in like I think where he's going to excel is going to be stopping the run and going after the quarterback, which to me sounds like an outside linebacker or a pass rusher anyway. And so it's the Vikings defense, what you're hearing from a lot of people is this isn't a 3-4. This isn't a 4-3. This isn't base nickel. This is a very strange hybrid Frankenstein's monster of a defense. And I think Ivan Pace fits that vibe better than anybody else on the team of just like he's too small to be a traditional middle linebacker and he's not an elite pass coverage guy, but he's also too small to just like be a traditional pass rusher from the outside. Like you want Danielle and Davenport doing that. So like where does he like it's almost like Brian Flores said, I like this kid, I want him on the team. I don't know how I'm going to use him, but we're going to we are going to force him onto the field in certain situations and let him do what he does. And I just like, it's just exciting. I was super excited when I saw the Vikings signed him after the draft. I was actually kind of shocked that he went undrafted at first. That was my main, like, why did no one take him? But I think that's the problem, is he doesn't have a every down spot, I don't think, on anybody's defense, but the Vikings are going to find creative ways to get him on the field, whether it be in obvious run situations or whether it be in obvious pass situations where they feel they can throw him in there and let him be an extra pass rusher. And I mean, like, and I say this every week now, and the new Madden did just come out, and I have been playing it all day, but new Madden is out. And I'm a Madden GM and a Madden coach. The ideas of like Ivan Pace blitz packages and like Danielle Hunter dropping into coverage against like Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask week 1, and them thinking, what the heck? And even of offensive linemen being like, okay, here comes the right tackle week 1 is like, for the Buccaneers, is like, Danielle Hunter's coming. I know this, it's 3rd down and 7. I know I have to block Danielle Hunter. Here we go, let's block Danielle Hunter. And then Danielle Hunter just smiles at him and backs up. And here comes this little nobody from Cincinnati just flying around the edge like Speedy Gonzalez or something. It's just I think it's going to be entertaining. I just think he's going to be
Absolutely.
a fan favorite. I'm really excited about him, and so that's kind of the last thing I have for the preseason. Do you have anything?